Hello, and welcome to the Be the CEO of Your Life live show. I'm Yvonne Dam of Amazing Self Coaching, and I help driven entrepreneurs to create more impact, to get more done in less time, and with that, to elevate their business to the next level of success. And I'm very excited because someone who knows all about making an impact and who makes an impact every time we speak is Kathleen. Kathleen, hello, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Yvonne. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I've really enjoyed this platform you've built. You've had some terrific interviews, and I learn so much every time. So I'm honored to be here with you today.
Great. As you know, I'm a big fan, so I'm really looking forward today. So for the people who don't know you, can you please make a short introduction so people understand who you are and what you help them with?
Sure. So I'm Kathleen McMorrow, and I am the principal of the Communications Optic, where vision meets perception. We are a public relations and integrated marketing communications firm. And our slogan means that every enterprise has a vision for how it would like to be perceived. And it's my job and my team's job together to create that perception through proactive public relations programs that help our clients elevate across all communications platforms to the preferred solutions agent in their field, whatever field that might be.
I like that. So basically you're saying PR is good for everyone?
I think so, but it means different things to different constituencies, and we'll get into that for a moment because there's a lot that every organization can do on its own to build its reputation. And really, PR happens in ways that are not necessarily thought of as PR. For instance, I'm a big fan of saying that your most important influencers and ambassadors are going to be your team members in your organization, because how they speak outside the organization about who you are and what you do as an entity is really what's going to define your reputation really broadly. So it's really important to get everybody on the same page and get the brand messaging aligned.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And to build onto that, so a lot of the PR happens when you might be unaware of it, right? But there's also PR that happens when you are aware of it. So tell me a bit about, there's a lot of controversy around PR. Let's start with the pink elephant. So tell me about the controversial PR, why some people think it's a great idea and why you do or you don't.
Okay, so of course I think public relations is a great idea, but it's defining public relations accurately and appropriately. When people say that's just PR, it's a pejorative and it's an insult, and it's not deserved, or we're just going to create some buzz. PR is strategic communications today. It is taking what your organization is trying to achieve and being very proactive about putting the programs and the communication strategies in place across all communications platforms. So where's the first place people go if they meet you at a cocktail party, or they meet you in a format such as this? We're on a webinar together, we're on a live show. I want to check out the website. So your website becomes your seminal piece of public relations. It's also where, when you're seeking editorial coverage with journalists, they're going to be vetting you and they're going to be looking at your website to see if your brand messaging aligns with what you say you are about in other places, or what your publicist has said in a pitch letter to snare that really important interview. And so it follows then that your social media also has to reflect that consistent messaging. So a lot of people are really marvelous, as you are, at using their LinkedIn very effectively as a thought leadership platform. And we help our clients do that as well. We know most of our clients are very busy concentrating on their core businesses, and writing articles and doing daily or posts several times a week or a month is really not usually fitting into their business day very well. So we really immerse in the business and create platforms to do that. So LinkedIn is really important. A lot of people do an excellent job of keeping it all very professional on LinkedIn. But what happens when we switch over to Facebook or to Instagram, to more fun platforms? Well, a lot of times that's where organizations fall down, because either a couple of things have happened. They've either contracted with an outside social media agency and they don't have a lot of oversight of the agency, or they think they can outsource it and not be so hands-on, and it doesn't really work that way. And so sometimes you end up in a situation where you have a really powerful website and you've had some great quality LinkedIn articles, and maybe you have a successful blog, and then you go over to Instagram and there's some crazy stuff happening over there, things that, you know, an organization would never say to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or even their trade publication or local penny server, are suddenly fodder on Instagram and Facebook. And it really shouldn't be that way. You really should be very consistent, and don't let the more fun social media become the Wild West and go off message. There's never going to be an appropriate moment to be off message, or court controversy, or drunk tweeting. Just don't do it. It's hard to roll it back once it's out there.
I hear you. And I had to laugh. I don't know whether you noticed, but Nua came in, my daughter, in the meantime, to bring me the flowers. So I had to laugh when you were talking about, keep it strategic. But I hear you, and I think, I must say, it happens on LinkedIn, and you're talking about Instagram, or maybe, you know, some people are on TikTok and Facebook. It's so easy to do funny things, but we always forget how long funny things are on there, and how everybody is watching you, even when you don't think they're watching. That's something that always surprises me, you know. Like, you know, I do a lot of videos, and then not always people comment, which is okay. But sometimes you get like, I don't think anybody saw it. Ages later, people can comment on a video that you thought, I didn't think anybody saw it, but yes, people see it, people comment on it. And you know, I personally like the Disney rule, or the PG rated rule, or you call it the New York Times rule. If you don't want to be, you know, there, don't bring that message. It should really be, you know, avoiding the controversial topics. But then I've also heard about people actually thinking that bad PR, you know, as long as I'm mentioned, it's good. And in a way, I know from way back in commercial university, people told us it's all about that the brand is mentioned. What's your take on that? Because I can imagine that it can be quite damaging when you're negative in the news.
Well, I think in the 1950s, around celebrity, for instance, being in the paper for the sake of being in the paper and having a press stunt or something that happened that was unexpected and maybe it was a little risque was actually okay for a brand. But in the age of SEO and the permanency of the internet, you never know when you're going to run for office. You never know when you're going to be switching fields, and something that you did that was controversial or was attention getting may not really fly in the next chapter of your life. And we know that on average, people are changing their careers 5 to 7 times over the course of a lifetime, and people aren't retiring in their 60s. They're having second and third careers. So it's really important to watch your P's and Q's. It's really important to always put out a positive reputation, positive thought leadership. And it's okay to take a stand on an important issue. I mean, as long as that issue doesn't alienate important members of your core audience that you're trying to reach. So, you know, why should a light bulb company take a political stand? Well, if it has to do with tariffs or import, maybe that's important to mention why it's better for their workforce or what they do. But if it's just to poke holes at a president for having bad hair and a bad tan, that's not really something that's going to resonate equally with everyone in your core audience. You honestly never really know someone's politics. So it's best to keep the politics personal as much as you can. And again, politics is just one example. But I would say that understanding that, as you mentioned, somebody comments on a video that you thought wasn't really looked at, What becomes relevant and timely is not something that we can completely control, because sometimes a video you did 6 months back has a new life because something is happening in the news. Maybe something that you said that was somewhat overlooked quite a while back is suddenly hyper optimized on SEO because for some reason there's something going on in the news cycle that your brand and your past thought leadership, or even a flippant quote you didn't mean to really give out, but you were feeling silly. And listen, we're all human. Everybody can have a bad day. That's part of what I love about PR is there is that opportunity for recovery, but recovery is not as simple as being mindful to always build a positive public relations image to begin with. I don't want people to feel, though, just because something negative occurred doesn't mean that there isn't a way out. Crisis communication is really at the center of every organization today. And so if you find yourself getting into a bad fix, maybe there's a work strike at your company, maybe there is a negative incident that happened involving an employee in his or her off time that has affected the image or reputation of the company, that doesn't mean that you can't reiterate the values you stand for, the things that are right for you, and talk about what you're doing to resolve the challenges. There is no organization that is not without challenges, but it's how you respond to it in the public arena that matters the most.
I hear you. And isn't it also that this is actually why companies need you? Because like you said, everybody's human, everybody makes a mistake or tries to be funny, and the quote is taken out of its context, and then it's all of a sudden not so funny anymore because, you know, it's just horrendous. But these things, like you're saying, they can come up on internet so much later and they can haunt you. So this is, you know, what I know from you, where you do a stellar job as well. So talk to me about how you can help people that kind of unknowingly got themselves into trouble, into PR trouble or PR hell, and what you do to help them.
Well, I've had clients give, you know, in the past before they came on board with us. And again, this is true for other PR companies. I'm not unique in this, but maybe they gave an interview that they thought was very positive with a quote, trusted journalist, but they didn't really vet what was going to happen in that interview. And maybe they said something they thought was off the record and it got into the record, and maybe it was with a pretty high profile publication and now it's hyper optimized, or maybe even high profile publications make serious editorial mistakes. And that mistake is out there in permanence. And now people are talking about the articles. So there's a lot of hyperlinks happening all across the internet. There's all these backlinks occurring. And so this article is going to be hyper optimized because it's come up in so many conversations. So what you really need to be doing to supplant that is, it's not the time to throw up your hands, but I would encourage clients to respond in the moment to these articles. And if you've already been in the pickle of having an article you thought would be positive published and it's not as positive as you hoped, or there's true inaccuracies there, contact a public relations expert and let that person be your advocate to the editorial media and say, listen, I realize this interview happened. This is what was meant. Maybe there's a second shot. Maybe there's a chance to correct the record. And even if there's not, it's just a matter of getting really well media trained, understanding what the questions are, and a good publicist, a good public relations company in general will prepare you well for your interviews and walk you through the potential questions from that specific journalist, because publicists can know a little more about the journalist than just saying, hey, they want to do an interview about, you know, why you're introducing this new product now. Well, chances are they're going to want to do a little more than just that. And they're going to want to dig under the hood and say, well, why did it take you 10 years to develop this technology? And XYZ company put out a similar product. Well, maybe XYZ company did put out a similar product 5 years ago, but somehow they're not the market leader because the product was rushed to market, was heavily flawed. I mean, again, that's just one example
Yeah.
people. But you have to be prepared to pivot in an interview, and I really don't recommend falling into the trap of off the record. Editors and reporters, they need to get the hot scoop. They need to get the hot story. And I love them to pieces and I work with many of them. But I think that you should establish that not while you're in the interview, but before the interview begins. Listen, I'd like to share more. Down the road, I'll be able to do so. For now, what's in our manufacturing pipeline, I'd like to keep that off the record. You're aware of a couple of things I've shared. Don't decide live in the interview that that's where you're going, because you're already there. So yes, I do think really knowing the ground rules for engagement with the editorial media is important. Another thing that really helps is when you do get an editorial story, it is an implied third-party endorsement that has a very different power than a display ad, a print ad, a commercial, because those things are what you say about yourselves. But when you actually make news in some fashion, whether you're quoted in a trend article, you're quoted as an expert authority on a major issue happening in your industry, or you are a feature profile in a key business publication, whatever it may be, that's the editorial community standing up and saying, you have authority, you have expertise, you have value. And that's a very different takeaway, because most people today are skeptical of advertising, but editorial is a very different game. And for someone like me who has a public relations company, and for my team members, if we are approaching the media, we're also risking our reputations that our clients indeed are newsworthy. So, my contacts at the New York Times, my contacts at local penny savers even, again, there is no small media, because I can tell you that sometimes a great trade article does more for you than a mention in the Wall Street Journal. I have seen it happen. So I don't discount any journalism. They all have their role, and they're all very important, and they all are worthy of so much respect. But I can tell you that I risk my own reputation. So I don't want to be a hack or a flack as a publicist. I want to be somebody who is a powerful resource connecting journalists with the innovators that are making a difference in their fields.
And that's another thing that you add as a PR agency, or that your firm adds as a PR agency, because sometimes PR is portrayed as being easy. Okay, so if I write my own press release, I'm doing a new program, I'm having a new product, let me write a new press release, let me send it out to some media, and then one of them will pick it up. So that's all great. But the more, we work together, I get to know you, I understand that that's not really how it works. And it's not just getting your release in there or something new, but I think the expert status is also when they actually proactive reach out to you and get you to quote or give an insight as an expert. And that's what the true difference is from a PR agency perspective, right? Because that's very, very hard to establish on your own. Am I right? Or can you elaborate?
Yvonne, I've got a job for you. Please be my newest vice president. Thank you for summing that up so beautifully. Yes, you are 100% right that there's so much more to media relations than sending out press releases. I am a firm believer, as most experts in my field are, in judicious use of the press release. But it's like the go-to, right? It's the first thing people think of when they hear public relations. They say, oh, you write press releases. Well, it's that much of the job. So much more important in media relations is engaging the media in a one-to-one basis to secure those important interviews, to establish my clients as thought leaders in their field, which they are. I don't take on clients that I think are trying to pull a fast one or don't have worthy expertise. I mean, all of my clients really are doing something interesting and special and important in their industries, and they're very worthy of that media coverage, and they're very worthy of being seen as experts. And so when you can go in with that much belief in the people that you represent, the enterprises you represent, then you also resonate that to the journalists. And I can look at how my clients stand out against their competition. What is their secret sauce? And that's what we do. You know, we find the differentiators. We love working with law firms, and there are many law firms, and you can represent many attorneys in similar fields, but each of them have a unique approach that might make certain parties better clients for them than others. And so it's creating that match. And how do you achieve that? Well, often you attract the best clients by getting into the right media and meeting the prospect where they are. So for some, that's going to be reading content on LinkedIn. For others, it's going to be a favorite trade journal. For others, they want to be, you know, in the grabbing the top business headlines in major business media, etc. But the difference is that when you're really speaking to your audience and you're doing it through the editorial media, you're really connecting on a level that just cannot be achieved through a press release. And even for branded events, which we do quite a bit of, and of course in the past year, there's been a lot of pivoting to webinars and seminars, and thankfully we're starting to see that we can go back to some in-person events and have those thought leadership breakfasts. And, you know, there's just something magical that happens in some of those events that starts big conversations in their industries, and people end up writing about it on LinkedIn, and they end up sharing it on social media, etc. And a lot of times articles get shared in a similar way. So there's a lot of folks out there. I mean, how many times we've all shared an article we found interesting. And I always encourage you, if you admire a particular journalist, and you like the work that they do, share their articles with your network, because it's a wonderful way to also get on their radar and show appreciation to those hardworking journalists who don't get enough credit. I mean, what they do, they're bombarded with information all day long, and a lot of them are siphoning through really critical issues and helping the rest of us understand what's really happening in our industries, what's happening in the political cycle, in the manufacturing cycle, you name it. So I think it's really important, though, to understand that sending out a press release and expecting to fill the room is not what happens. Public relations is extremely proactive. It is not a passive field to be in.
Yeah, and that's why I think
so. And again, don't spam journalists.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, just don't spam journalists with press releases. Be careful, you know, be very strategic in your use of them. And oftentimes just send a good letter to them saying you have some information to share. Always lead from that compass of service when you're engaging the media, that you want to be a resource, not that you want to be featured per se.
Yeah, I hear you. I love that. And you said something that I think needs a bit of a highlight. You talked about thought leadership.
Yes.
Talk to me, what is thought leadership? Because, you know, where I come from, there was a lot of thought leadership, but I like your view on it.
Sure. So thought leadership is sharing your expertise. It's not, you know, giving away the service you provide, but I'll give a great example. Some of my attorney clients during this pandemic time, a lot of us here in the US, and I'm sure it was true in other countries, we had a lot of alphabet soup coming at us, a lot of new acronyms, PPP, EDL, SBA loan program names, etc. What did it all mean? These were all new programs. And how do I know if I'm eligible? And who do I need to bring on board? And what, you know, where do I even begin? And I have to act quickly, but I don't want to make a mistake. And what's a loan and what's a grant? Like, there was so much lack of clarity. And a lot of attorney clients really broke that down really, really well. And they just put it out there on their LinkedIn, on their Constant Contact. They put it up on their websites. They did a great job. And some of them gained some new clients because their own law firms, those particular clients, weren't helping them decipher all this. Everybody was kind of in a tailspin. And it was when you were providing relevant information that resonated with specific audiences and that's thought leadership. That's creating change. That's saying, oh, now you're helping me understand this arcane concept. I didn't know what it meant, or I didn't know what to do. So you're sharing information of value because you have cultivated a particular expertise, and that's where you become an authority, and that's where your thought leadership is wanted, not only by journalists, not only for your own social media, but sometimes it's very important for building strategic alliances with others in organizations that are akin to what you do. You can have this powerful co-marketing that can occur when you team with another entity and you benefit from shared thought leadership. I saw a lot of that happening in the pandemic, accounting firms teaming with law firms. There were authors that were creating for the first time interview programs and platforms, and they were having speakers come on, they were having teachers come on, they were creating the important conversations that were so essential to all of us because we were all wayfinding through a difficult time. Again, when you lead from a compass of service, you cannot go wrong.
Yeah.
Share what you know. But again, you have to be very careful when you do that, because when you're sharing broadly, you can never be providing very specific guidance. And you have to give them that caveat. Your situation might be different, but in general, here's what you need to know. Of course, attorneys are great at doing that because they always say this is not legal counsel. But I really caution others to do the same. Say, I'm only speaking broadly and generally. Your situation may require a different paradigm, but if you're just seeking to understand the core concepts, here's what I can share with you.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, Kathleen, before I forget, so when people want to reach out to you, when they want to talk to you, or when they want to understand more what your company can do for them, people can find you on LinkedIn. Google Kathleen R. McMorrow.
Yes.
So that people will be able to reach out to you directly. If they want to connect with you, they can do so. Need to send a personalized
an invite. And I'd love to get into a conversation with anybody who's benefited from this. Our website is tco-pr.com. I'm Kay McMorrow at tco-pr.com. But again, this is LinkedIn Live. Let's use the power of connecting. I'd love to hear from you through LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Now we're coming to the 30-minute mark. Just to round it up, I know it went quickly, right?
That went really fast. Yes, thank you.
So do you have any last question or remark or something you want to share before we close the show?
I would just like to share that everybody in business today has to understand that their expertise has great value, and there's a market for that. There's media that can be leveraged. There are editorial relationships to be made. There are bylined article publishing opportunities. There are speaking engagements. And there are times where you already have your entire audience in place to put on an excellent branded event that's going to elevate conversations within your own industry. Remember that the power of your PR is inside of you.
I love it. I love it. I think this is beautiful. So we're going to end here because I don't think we can go over this, but I love that everyone has value and that, PR can just elevate that value. And when people need a great expert or someone that knows all ins and outs about PR, Kathleen is the person to go to. Her firm is amazing. So yeah, Kathleen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you for everybody seeing this. I really appreciate this opportunity for engagement, and it's a beautiful platform you've created, and thank you so much.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to end the show. I'm going to be back tomorrow with another amazing guest. So see you later. Bye for now.